Now that we are up to speed on the traditional approach for generating visualization applications supported by procedural toolkit-based pipelines, we will introduce our notion of a visualization query that provides a declarative alternative. As we have seen, there are many user skills needed to visualize data. A large part of the problem is engineering, for example, software development. This means that scientists must either learn how to use a visualization toolkit or rely on a visualization expert to develop the required visualization application. Additionally, most software, including visualization, are developed using imperative or procedural languages such as C++ and Java, which may be challenging for scientists to use. Our question we are addressing is whether we can provide a means for users to generate visualizations declaratively, that is, specify what visualization they want without having to write procedural code. The assumption here is that scientists know what visualizations they want, but may not know how to generate them. Diving right in, our velocity model visualization is a result of what we refer to as a visualization query. Below is the visualization query whose execution resulted in the velocity model isosurfaces we saw at the beginning of our presentation. Breaking the query apart, we see that the select segment specifies what view we want our data represented as, isosurfaces, as well as what viewer we are using to present the result, Mozilla Firefox in this case. We could refer to these specifications as our visualization strategy. The From segment specifies the URL of where the data is published, while the Format segment indicates the format our data is encoded in this case a binary float array. The Type segment specifies the semantic type of our data, in this case D2, a data type whose definition can be found in an RDF document published on the web. Please note that these type definitions are not covered in this presentation. Collectively, the format, from, and type specifications provide a characterization for our dataset to be visualized. Finally, the where clause specifies the parameter bindings. In this case, the query is specifying that the resultant visualization should be rotated 104 degrees about the x-axis, and that the data interval to consider for drawing the isosurfaces is between 0 and 9,000 inclusive. To frame the notion of our visualization queries, I'm going to draw parallels between our visualization query language and an extremely popular query language, SQL. Visualization queries mirror SQL queries in that SQL queries requests are specified declaratively. SQL query requests are then translated into query plans, which are pipelines of relational algebra operators. And finally, the query plan computes the result requested by the SQL query, usually a table. With our visualization queries, information specified in the query is used to derive visualization toolkit pipelines, such as our VTK Java pipeline, rather than query plans. The pipeline in turn generates the visualization requested by the query. Although visualization queries may be easier for scientists to write than procedural pipeline code, we still need to answer a few questions before we can consider them as a viable option. Our first question is, what kind of knowledge is needed to generate pipelines that answer these visualization queries? A related question is, what infrastructure can leverage this knowledge to support the generation and execution of these pipelines? In light of the previous questions, we can better define what the VisKo project is. VisKo, it supplements user skills with visualization knowledge to compose pipelines. Visualization knowledge is the culmination of the user skills needed to build a visualization toolkit pipeline, and we will further describe how this knowledge is used later in this presentation. Technically speaking, VisKo is a framework for encoding user skills into visualization knowledge, managing the visualization knowledge, automatically generating pipelines from the visualization knowledge, and finally automatically generating visualizations by executing these derived pipelines. Just to reiterate what the purpose of visualization queries are, I have juxtaposed traditional procedural pipeline code with the visualization query that generates the same visualization as the procedural Java code. Note the compactness of the visualization query, as it only specifies what visualization we want, rather than specifying how to generate it. I will now present at a very high level how we use the information specified in the visualization query to automatically derive visualization pipelines. The following is a VTK pipeline automatically synthesized by VisKo that generates the velocity model isosurfaces specified by the visualization query we studied earlier. Similar to the procedural code, each segment of the pipeline corresponds to the description of some operator. The presentation also discloses the parameter bindings, as shown at the bottom of the slide. Finally, the order in which the operators are presented correspond to the order in which data flows through the operators. Well, how does VisKo build one of these pipelines? The query contains information about the input format of the data to be visualized, as well as the target view the data should be represented as. From the target view, we can identify an operator, in this case a view mapper, that generates the requested view. From the view mapper, we can identify the format it operates on, which we will call our target format. The problem is then finding a sequence of operators that transforms the input format to the target format. The following is a graphical depiction of the pipeline composition problem. Provided a query, we know what format the data input is encoded in, binary float array, and the requested view the data should be represented as, isosurfaces. Given the requested view, we need to identify an operator that generates isosurfaces, in this case, VTK contour filter. Our system also knows that VTK contour filter operates on VTK image data formats. This information about the capabilities of VTK contour filter is known as visualization knowledge. Because we know that VTK contour filter generates isosurfaces, we know that this operator must be part of our pipeline. This is denoted by our outline box that indicates a match. The problem is then, how do we convert our binary float array into VTK image data, a format that the operator can work on? The sequence of operators that can perform this conversion is our required pipeline, and it can be composed of a single operator or by many. I would now like to present an example of a visualization query whose execution returns multiple results. Thus, the system was able to synthesize multiple pipelines. I will present this scenario using screenshots from our VisKo query submission form published on the web. Consider the query below that requests for a wildcard view, meaning the user is requesting for all possible visualizations. The input format of the dataset is Esri gridded, and the semantic type is gravity, denoted as D19. This is an explorative query and can be used when users want to browse the different kinds of visualizations possible for their data, as specified by the wildcard symbol, or asterisk. The execution of the gravity map query returned 27 different results, meaning the system was able to visualize the gravity data 27 different ways. Each row in the table corresponds to one of the unique visualization results, where the left column contains a link to the visualization and the right-hand side contains a link to the corresponding pipeline that generated the visualization. If we click on a visualization link, we are provided with the visualization of our input gravity data. In this example, a raster map using operators from the GMT visualization toolkit. Clicking on another result presents us with yet another raster map, but this particular map was generated using NCARD command language operators, abbreviated as NCL. This shows us that VisKo will try to visualize datasets using any combination of toolkit operators it is aware of. Continuing further down the list, we see that VisKo also generates a contour map using only GMT operators. Finally, VisKo was also able to generate a 2D plot representation of the gravity data, once again using only GMT operators. The other links in the result table correspond to the different formats of the visualizations presented, some as PNG and JPEG images, as well as some PDF documents. Although I have presented a very algorithmic description of how VisKo builds visualization pipelines, pipeline composition is actually derived through the application of rules. For example, one rule states that every pipeline must include a mapper operator, i.e. a geometry extractor. Another rule states that the output format of an operator must match the input format of the next operator in the pipeline sequence, our most essential composition rule. Although I have mentioned some basic pipeline composition rules, I have made no mention of the statements that these rules are applied to. VisKo relies on a visualization knowledge base that is a composition of statements describing the capabilities of operators supported by different toolkits. It is this visualization knowledge base that the rules are applied to, and this knowledge is further described in the next section.